What's up, everyone? Connor OHanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And tonight we have a mishmash of right wing nonsense, reactions to quite a bit of clips, quite a bit of tweets, and the main dish that will start us all off, I suppose, will be President Biden visiting Ukraine, but specifically he's going, we're going to look at a speech he's giving in Poland and how this connects to the broader narrative. And then we're going to get into some of the culture war nonsense, of course, that we typically have to deal with nowadays. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of moving around. The transitions are not going to be nearly as smooth because there's not the big, blockbuster moments. So this is going to be how we run the show tonight. I have gotten the request in the chat from CB to get the appetizer before the main entree, so we can do that. We will do that with let me pull up the other clip as I had it queued. But let's pull up this. We're going to start off with some real right-wing stupid BS. This is coming from owner, proprietor, and genius that came up with the logic that if your house is underwater in Florida, don't worry about it. Just sell it. Just sell it. Once it's underwater, just sell it. You can just move. Doesn't really matter. The environment's not real. Climate change is not real. And that, of course, comes from our wonderful friend, the proprietor of the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, who has some unique thoughts about wages, specifically wages and salaries in blue states. And we're going to get to the difference between red and blue states very soon here today as we talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene wanting a divorce from us. Boo-hoo. Oh, no. But here is Ben Shapiro giving his take on wages.
Well, I mean, first of all, the wage to cost of living gap would not exist in the absence of regulation and subsidy, at least not nearly as much. The fact of the matter is that one of the reasons you have housing shortages in blue areas is because of development restrictions that are largely created by the left.
He was right. I'm pausing him here because he was right up until he said developed by the left. Restrictions on housings are put up in cities and in towns. I mean, you could look at the town I live in. Even though Democrats control councils or they control, I mean, typically cities and boroughs have councils, so let's just roll with it. Mayors don't usually have impacts on this necessarily, but in some cases they do. Let's talk about the average city, the average town. The council decides with the planning commission or the zoning commissions how they zone and plan cities. Now, when we look at this from the abstract, and he says the left. So to Ben Shapiro, everybody that is considered a Democrat is the left. Leftists, social democrats like myself, or even people to my left, socialists and whatnot, are not advocating for discriminatory housing that is raising the value of housing arbitrarily to keep people out. Because guess what? The people that typically align themselves left of center, and I'd probably say left of the Democratic Party or the left end, the left flank of the Democratic Party, are typically the people that struggle to own real estate or don't own real estate or will never earn real estate or understood and saw the struggle of owning and getting real estate, myself included. Even though now I own a home, all of my friends, everybody that I know that is a millennial is like struggling to find rentable places, let alone to buy. I just have the luxury of having a realtor as a mom. So, sometimes you step in shit, but not always the case. Not always the case.
The reason that you have massive inflation right now is, again, because of left-wing financial policy.
Wrong. The inflation that is caused right now is not by, because he's going to say it's by spending. We talked about this last week. Go check out last week's episode covering the modern monetary theory and the deficit myth, which is, the book written on that. But inflation is not caused by increases in spending from the government side, because one, a lot of the big bills that him and the right wing talk about, right? Like they want to blame it on the Inflation Reduction Act or on the infrastructure package or whatever it is. A lot of that money hasn't actually been spent yet. First of all. Second of all, if you go way back, you talk about the CARES Act, you talk about the American Rescue Plan. Yeah, these are massive spending bills, but these were things that helped bolster the economy in a time of economic destruction and catastrophe, frankly. And I'm citing both of them because one of them was under President Trump and one of them was under President Biden. So there's not like a partisan divide there. The Fed is not controlled by the president either. So let's also remember that. The Fed is an independent body. So saying all this nonsense is just made up. It is not true. Inflation right now is caused by supply shortages.
It tends to be that wages move in tandem with costs, generally speaking.
Historically not accurate.
Because, again, there is no such thing as a non-living wage. Nobody dies.
This is the main crux of the argument here, so I'm going to rewind that for a second. But here's the main piece of this clip as I talk for 5 minutes over a 40-second clip. Shapiro is arguing that where you live, your wage will adjust to it. Rather than thinking it's the other way around, right? Rather than saying, okay, if you have a high wage, rents and mortgages and all that stuff will be higher. He's saying that if you live in a city with a high cost of living, it must be the case that your wage goes up. Now, in the abstract, yes, that is the case. But that does not mean that, we have Philadelphia where it's a higher cost of living, and that means that everybody there is living off of the minimum wage, or frankly, nobody could live off the minimum wage. I think Philadelphia does have a technically higher minimum wage than Pennsylvania, but I will remind everybody that is watching this that the Pennsylvania and the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That is minuscule. And when people talk about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, because remember, that number is also, let's be honest here, out of date. But even arguing for a $15 an hour minimum wage adjusted today, we're not talking about a lot of money. You're talking about like $26,000 or something like that, if I'm doing the math correctly really quickly. Like you're talking about minuscule wage increases on the average, but it would be astronomically important to those people that are at that level. You're functionally doubling somebody's wage. So let's hear him out now.
There is no such thing as a non-living wage. Nobody dies on their wage. And that is not a thing that happens inside the United States. This is why when people say living wage, the question is, well, what do you mean by a non-living wage? Do you just mean a wage that you don't think is high enough? And for what job? And what does the market look like? Well,
so here, it's going to go back now. So now let's just look and kind of try, like, in all good faith, right? Steel man this argument. What is he trying to say? He is saying in America, you're not going to die with a job. You're not going to die off of your wage. Maybe. But what he is failing to acknowledge, beyond the fact that people do die and they literally live on the streets because they can't afford housing, what he fails to acknowledge is that because of benefits like SNAP that provide food for people in need, or vouchers for food, because of programs like Medicaid and Medicare that provide healthcare to people when they are either, elderly or, hit a threshold of poverty. Ignoring programs like housing assistance, like housing vouchers, these are things that exist largely in blue cities, largely in blue states, that help and develop things more for people in those areas than they do in the red states. Because remember, red states eat up and suck up more tax dollars than they put in, vice versa for blue states. So, all of this is to say, Shapiro is trying to say we don't need to have a minimum wage. We don't need to have all this stuff because you're not going to die. The only reason why people are able to make it in America when their wages, well, because remember that Walmart and maybe Amazon has taken over this, title, but Walmart is the single largest employer with their employees receiving SNAP benefits. So what that functionally means is because they are paying their workers a starvation wage, a wage that cannot provide for their family, they have to receive government assistance to buy the food within Walmart. That is the insanity. And all of this is to say that Shapiro won't acknowledge that you don't die in America because of the minimum wage or because of a wage, solely because of the fact that we have these programs that exist. But when you push him harder, he does not want those programs to exist. So it's a safe thing to say, oh, we don't need. It's the same thing with the comparisons to the Scandinavian models of economics. Now, people always want to say, oh, the Scandinavian countries are super, super socialist, or they're super, super capitalist. No, they're social democracies. They provide safety nets for their people, and they have strong worker protections, and they don't need a federal minimum wage necessarily because nobody's working at what would be considered a starvation wage, or the amount of people that are significantly lower, and maybe you could advocate for a minimum wage there, but it's not the same. It's not even close to being the same. So I hope that serves well. That's a big 15 minutes basically of off of the what's it called, appetizer here for you. Now, where we want to go next is President Biden is going to, well, he's already there. He's been there. He has spent the last couple of days over in Europe, and he's been doing this to further show his support for Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. We've talked about this in the past. I will not spend as much time talking about, the war itself, but I do think it kind of always comes up, and it is necessary to validate a progressive viewpoint of this. But the war in Ukraine is a justified intervention. Now, through the use of sales of arms and whatnot to the Ukrainian people, it is not a justification for American troops to be in Ukraine. That is not happening, not right now. And if that was even floated, it would not have my support, right? But to limit the sphere of influence of a frankly dictator, Vladimir Putin, and protect what should be a sovereign nation, it is a justified action to provide this funding and the weapons, and basically, in my opinion, whatever is necessary to protect Ukraine. Because if we can protect Ukraine, then I also, and this is this could probably sound a little off to some people, but if we show that we can protect Ukraine, that also shows that we can protect Taiwan. It shows that we can stand up for, and this is the important part. That this might, some people might disagree with here, but it shows that we can stand up for the Palestinians. It shows that we can stand up for people in Central America, Venezuela, in plenty of other countries that people are fleeing from, Argentina. And it shows that we can choose and pick and choose our battles, like, literally and figuratively, and win without having to, crush our opponent with our might and sacrifice human lives. It doesn't have to be the use of a nuclear weapon like we did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like, these are some of the biggest blunders, in my opinion, and maybe blunder is not the right word, but, the advocacy for using a nuclear weapon anywhere, anytime is, in my opinion, unjustifiable. So with Vladimir Putin, he broke the final treaty that we had. Well, he basically is disregarding the final treaty that we had regarding nuclear weapons. So this is, again, where it's like Biden is coming out, showing the support, a surprise visit, and I honestly think it was a good move. He spent it President's Day in Ukraine, which people got mad about. I think in the clip that of Trump that I have here in a second too, we'll see that. But I think this is the most presidential thing a president can do on, President's Day, or any patriotic thing, maybe other than, 4th of July, is to show the world that we are still leaders and we still care about other countries, and we're not going to let a dictator invade a sovereign nation without repercussions. So here's Biden. This is today. It's technically early this morning for us, later in the evening in Poland. And this is him talking about what he's doing basically on his European tour, and talking about Putin here.
For free people refuse to live in a world of hopelessness and darkness. This has been an extraordinary year in every sense. Extraordinary brutality.
Because we're coming up on, actually, it might actually be like the exact year to the date of the invasion of Ukraine. I remember being on an audit last year, and I was like sitting in my hotel room, and I was like, holy crap, that's actually happening. And yeah, so it's around this time last year.
From Russian forces and mercenaries. They've committed depravities, crimes against humanity, without shame or compunction. They've targeted civilians with death and destruction, used rape as a weapon of war, stolen Ukrainian children in an attempt to steal Ukraine's future, bombed train stations, maternity hospitals, schools, and orphanages. No one can turn away their eyes from the atrocities Russia is committing against the Ukrainian people. It's abhorrent. It's abhorrent. But extraordinarily, as well, has been the response of the Ukrainian people and the world. 1 year after the bombs began to fall, Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine. Ukraine is still independent and free.
So it's funny. It's funny because he always does that like weird, like lean in thing. Now I do that sometimes too. I do this thing, which probably blows out people's ears. But it's fun. It's funny to like see him do it over and over again because we see him speak so much. But yeah, I mean, there's like pretty much there's nothing to disagree with in that speech. I think for the most part, like, we are taking the right actions. At some point we have to look at, when do we start asking for people to sit down and discuss, like, what are we doing here? And there, I saw in news articles, some of the Russian oligarchs pushing for trying to assassinate Biden. I mean, like, we're talking about some of the most depraved people at this point where they're trying to assassinate a president. Like, that is insane. But going from what we could assume is one of the one of, I guess, supposedly Putin's enemies will go to one of Putin's buddies, if I can pull the right clip up here. There we go. So you thought I photoshopped myself Biden for the thumbnail? No, that was last week. Last week I did that for the State of the Union, or 2 weeks ago I photoshopped myself for the State of the Union, my head. But here we have, this is a clip that I couldn't find the actual clip, so you're actually going to get my reaction to a clip of David Pakman reacting to a Donald Trump. But the real part of what I wanted to get here was the original clip, but I couldn't find it on Twitter, was Donald Trump getting interviewed by this kid. Like, he had this one of his presidential rallies, his presidential campaign rallies, and the kid basically asks him, what do you plan on doing when you become president? When you become number 47, how are you going to, handle the war in Ukraine? How are you going to end it? So this is, we're going to get Pakman reacting in live because he's interjecting like I do, but also we will react to it as well.
After you become the 47th president, what are you going to do to stop the war in Ukraine?
Yeah.
So I would.
This is just, it's just a hilarious clip. Like, so that's the question. It's a simple question, but his answer is just so funny, and his mannerisms are so funny.
Literally start calling, not from the day I took over, but from the night I won. And I called two people.
Two people.
You know who the two people are? Putin, right? You know who Putin is? And Zelensky.
Zelensky.
And I'd say, we're going to meet. We're going to
That's how he would say it. He would get on the phone and he'd go, we're going to meet.
meet. And I guarantee I could work that out.
Oh, man.
I guarantee. I know exactly what I'd say, by the way. I know exactly. I'd tell one guy this, and I'd tell one guy that, and I say, you better make a deal.
Trump's.
Yeah, so that's the clip. But it's so funny to me the way he's like, the way his mannerisms are around this stuff. However, my real critique here is not just to make fun of this clip. David, you can watch David Pakman do that if you want. My main critique here around connection with Biden speaking, right, is what Trump is suggesting is almost exactly, now it's slightly different because Reagan did this in the 80s, or sorry, in 79 and 80 with the Iran hostage situation, where he was negotiating without the power to do so prior to being elected and then sworn in. So functionally, there are some transition teams that get presidents into the right spots, and they teach them about foreign policy and here's who you're going to talk to, and there's plenty of stuff I'm sure that I have no idea that happens, that they get trained on and they get debriefed on and whatever, right? But to say that the second he wins, he's already going to be calling up leaders and telling them what to do and all this stuff, it actually mirrors some of our history where we see some of the most corrupt scandals breaking out. Now, I don't know if it's explicitly illegal for a president to do this because, precedent leads to say it doesn't matter. Again, go back, look at Ronald Reagan with the Iran hostage scandal. he was negotiating while President Carter was still president, and he basically convinced them to hold the terrorists to hold onto the hostages until the election happens. And then on Reagan's first day, they release them. Coincidence? No, it's not. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. It was never a coincidence. That was always part of the plan. So, like, my real critique here is that Trump's just saying this stuff out loud. He has no actual policy proposal. I mean, great, there's not policy, but he has no strategy as to what he's going to say to Zelensky. He has no strategy to what he's going to say to Putin. He's just going to go, you guys over there, you got to play nice, and Putin, you could still have Crimea. You could probably still have parts of, the Donbass region. You could have all this stuff, but just stop bombing. And that's probably what he'll say. You're right. He probably also is not going to call them the night he wins, because he's going to be, well, let's be honest, he's not going to win. So that's the real answer there for why he won't call them when he wins. So let's go from one Trump clip. Let me just say in the chat, for those who are saying that they don't know how to use Discord, everybody knows how to use Discord. It's exactly like Slack, everybody. Join the Greater Society Discord server. Chat in the, general texts or any of that stuff. Send memes, all that stuff. That's where you go. And announcements is usually just me announcing the shows live. It's that simple. Nothing crazy. What is Slack? It's Slack, young man. Slack is a, office collaboration thing that we all have to do. But yeah, I can add a meme channel on the Discord. Use the general chat as the Discord server. But I'm telling you, Discord is simple. Get on there, join the server, and just click around. You'll see. So going from one Trump clip to the next, we're going to watch this. It's just a brief clip. There's nothing of substance. This is a liberal chat. None of us have jobs, obviously. Oh, man. No comment. I wish I didn't have one right now, basically. But I do. So, one clip to the next, we're going to go. This is just a basic. Let's just use this as a palate cleanser because it's so stupid. But here's Trump. He's going to go and see the spot where the train derailed in East Palestine. And he wants everybody to know. He doesn't have Trump steaks. He did not fly on a Trump airplane. He did not drink any Trump vodka. But he's got some Trump water.
Because we're bringing thousands of bottles of water, Trump water, actually. Most of it.
Most of it. The Trump water is such a hot commodity. He couldn't even bring enough. 1,000 water bottles. Wow, that's really generous from a guy that's a billionaire. I mean, really, that's just, he's there for political points. He wants to own Biden because Biden's over in Europe. But we're bringing Trump water, only 1,000 bottles. Can't afford more than 1,000 bottles, guys. It's, the highest quality, the best thing you've ever had. Best water since Trump vodka, which was a real thing. Look it up, even though Trump's, doesn't drink. But yeah, unfortunately for those who can't get the Trump water.
Some of it we had to go to a much lesser quality water. You want to get those Trump bottles, I think, more than anybody else. But we're bringing a lot of water because we're.
So that's just there's no substance there. It's just my way of shit posting, basically, because it's just so funny to see Trump campaigning again. I mean, yeah, I won't go too into it, but I find him in the isolation of having no power, but like kind of still being a buffoon, entertaining. But the second he begins to actually wrangle power, that's when it starts to get scary. But him and Ron DeSanctimonious, or Meatball Ron as he goes by now, is starting to heat up too. So we'll see about that. Yeah, the water in East Palestine is probably safer to drink than Trump water. It's probably safer. There probably is fewer chemicals because whatever Trump is drinking, whatever water he is drinking, he's built different. I'll just say that. He's built different. So the next thing is something that I find interesting. I want to point out that progressives have been historically labeled, and I'll say liberals and progressives, they're different, but for this sake of argument here, we'll lump them in together. Sorry, I'm laughing because of what's in chat right now. Liberals and progressive have historically been labeled as the unpatriotic group. They hate America. They don't care about this country. If you don't like this country, then you can just get out. Now, on this show, if you don't know, like, I'm a big proponent of, patriotic progressivism. If this is your first episode, that might be an introduction to, that concept. Maybe that should be my next, big project, is writing something on that. But for us today, I'll keep it at that. Because you can be a progressive, you can have critiques of American history, of American culture, of American society more broadly. You can have critiques of capitalism. You can still be a patriot. You can still love this country. And I think that actually most people do love the country. They just want to make it better. And that's what a patriot would do. With that being said, this idea that I'm about to show you is the most anti-American, and I am being sincere. I am not LARPing when I say this. I am not, trying to act indignant. I genuinely believe that this concept, this, however long we take discussing this, is the most un-American, unpatriotic thing that I have ever heard from a sitting congresswoman. Congresswoman from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, says this, and I will zoom in so that you guys can read it. We need a national divorce. No, she's not talking about a divorce, interpersonally. She is quite literally talking about a divorce of the country. Now, she's not saying civil war. We'll talk about that in a second. But that is functionally what she is saying. She says, and I quote, "We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this. From the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous America Last policies, we are done." Now, this is not even a thinly veiled call for basically what happened in Civil War, a secession of red states. Now, the Civil War was a secession of southern states to protect, let's go with they were seceding to protect states' rights. States' rights to do what? Oh, to own slaves. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene happens to come from one of the states that seceded, and was part of the Confederacy. And I'm sure she's probably pretty proud, and I'm sure somewhere has a Confederate flag hanging around. This needs to be high. I'm actually, I am actually going to disagree with Jordan on your point in the chat. You, for those listening, the point in the chat is every person who quote tweeted her just boosted her Twitter account. Now I know what you're saying. Yes, it seems like a promotion. I'm gonna tell you this because I quote tweeted this. This should be plastered everywhere. This should be covered on all the news media, on every, like, this is literally calling for, as pointed out in the chat, treasonous. This is treasonous. This is disingenuous because she doesn't actually believe that this could happen. Because how would you split the United States, which has blue states sometimes, like Pennsylvania is half the time blue, half the time red? How do you split the middle of the country, which is majority Republican, and California and Oregon, and Arizona, which are blue? How do you split that, like, geographically? How do you break up, okay, what if there's like a red state right here and all the surrounding states are blue, or vice versa? Like, it's just so stupid. I can hear your point to say screenshot it, whatnot. I don't care. I want to put her on blast. I want everybody to see it. I don't care if people follow her. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't believe in that fallacy anymore. I don't believe that people should be, I don't care that Trump's back on Twitter. He doesn't use it. But in fact, I would rather have it centralized, point to it, and say, look at that. That is insane. That is nuts. That is not on Truth Social or whatever it is. That's on Twitter. Everyone's going to see it, rather than just his sycophants. I do go back and forth. Some people probably should be platformed, some people shouldn't. But this is something that I think should be amplified every single place possible to say, this is insane. I hear your argument. I don't agree with it, but we can agree to disagree. We have comment, there are still black strips of cloths that have been hanging in front of same house written in white paint stating America died January 20, 2021. I have pictures to prove it. Yeah, I don't understand the black strips. But yeah, I mean, I assume that's just saying that Biden got sworn in. Let's see. Where do we go from here? So this is her response to it. So she says, thread, why I'm only going to read like the first part here, but why the left and the right should consider a national divorce not a civil war, but a legal agreement to separate our ideological and political disagreements by states while maintaining our legal union. Definition of irreconcilable differences. Inability to agree on most things or on important things. Tragically, I think the left and the right, have reached irreconcilable differences. I'll speak for the right and say we are absolutely disgusted and fed up with the left cramming and forcing their ways on us and our children with no respect for our religion or faith. Not true. Traditional values. Also not true. And economic and government policy beliefs. There's probably some legitimacy there. But that is not, none of that is a actual argument for having a divorce. I know I'm a millennial. I hear you. I disagree with you. That's all. So this argument then brings us to What happens if you want to leave a red state? What happens if you want to leave a blue state? This is large forehead man, Charlie Kirk, which, I have a big freaking head, so me saying this is interesting, but he has a very small face. With Marjorie Taylor Greene to discuss what happens when somebody wants to move, from one state to another. What happens when people are leaving blue states for some reason to go to a red state? What happens?
I don't think they'll ever stop trying to invade our states or our counties. So how do we stop them?
Well, I think that, red states could choose in how they allow people to vote in their states. For example, over the past couple of years, we've seen a mass exodus from California and New York, where we've seen people fleeing those leftist policies and moving to states like Florida, Georgia, Texas, states where they like the tax policies, they like the schools, they like the consequences of Republican and red policies. What I think would be something that some red states could propose is, well, okay, if Democrat voters
Democratic
choose to flee these blue states where they cannot tolerate the living conditions, they don't want their children taught these horrible things, and they really change their mind.
Democrats are not leaving places because of what horrible stuff is being taught to our children. Well, I don't have children, but you know what I'm saying. Democrats, when they leave blue areas, typically are leaving for jobs. They're leaving for more space. They are leaving because they just want to move towards their family, like someone moving to Florida. They're retiring. There's a number of different reasons why people leave blue states, go to red states. Or, like in COVID, they leave blue areas because they're the most densely populated areas to avoid getting sick. There's a large variety of reasons why people leave where they live. And there's plenty of people that move from the red areas into the blue areas because guess where most of the jobs are? In the blue areas. Wonder why that is.
On the types of policies that they support, well, once they move to a red state, guess what? Maybe you don't get to vote for 5 years. You can live there, you can work there, but you don't get to bring your values that you basically created in the blue states you came from by voting for Democrat leaders and Democrat policies.
Democratic. Now, this is the main argument here. All of this is rolled into the broader agenda of the right. They don't want you to vote. They don't want you to have your civil rights. They don't want you to have your individual liberties. They don't want you to have it because they're afraid of you changing the power dynamics and grabbing the reins of power for not just you, for the middle class, the working class people, the people impoverished, the homeless people, people that are starving, people that are looking for a job. The retired people, even though the retired people vote for Republicans overwhelmingly because of their age, in reality, someone like me is advocating and pushing for policy that will help a retired person significantly more than someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene. They do not give a damn about the working class of this country. They don't even think that you should be able to vote. She just said it. If I moved from Pennsylvania, which I don't know if she would consider Pennsylvania a blue state, she probably would just for the sake of argument. But if I moved from Pennsylvania into Ohio, one state over, she doesn't think I should vote. I'm arguably more educated, more highly educated than she is. I'm younger, but she doesn't think I should be able to vote. If you move from wherever you live to Florida, you think she shouldn't be able to vote. Now, that's the type of thing that this ideology is leaking and is saying the quiet part out loud. That is not what she is supposed to say. But she's not going to be punished for it. She's actually going to be elevated for it. Now, here we have We have, on furthering this point of the national divorce, we have Sean Hannity weighing in, arguing this stuff. What are some of the results? What are some of the benefits? This is him echoing Marjorie Taylor Greene. A quote, much smaller federal government. Remember, big government, small government, neither is necessarily better. Small government doesn't mean anything. Big government doesn't mean anything. You can have good big government, you can have good small government, and you can have everything in between. States fully control public education. The states largely do already control public education, although it's important to note there's a reason why they say states control public education and not local jurisdictions control public education, because they want to divert from cities. So let's just say the state of Pennsylvania is controlled by Republicans. It's not anymore. Half of the delegation is controlled by, half of the houses of government of Congress are controlled by the Democrats. The House of Representatives is controlled by Democrats. But let's just say we lost one seat. The state would be controlled by the Republicans. So that way that in Philadelphia and Allegheny County and Pittsburgh and even places like Bucks County, although I would argue that we're benefiting from some of that fact in Bucks County, we don't have local control of public education, and they want to just divert because they think that well, it's true. Republicans control more of the state houses than Democrats, just based on, population of some of those states. In the chat, if we have a national divorce, does that mean we get 2 Christmases? No. You get nothing. You'll like it. Furthering on the national divorce talking points, states could continue using fossil fuels. That's a wonderful choice. That's exactly what we should be pushing for. That's a great reason to break up the country. It's a great reason to literally say, I don't give a shit about the Constitution. I don't care about interstate commerce, which is why Alexander Hamilton wrote the Federalist Papers, to bring together the Union of the United States. Now, again, she doesn't care about any of this stuff. Hannity doesn't care about any of this stuff. They don't care about the history of this country, the good or the bad. They just want to broadly paint with a brush. One-day elections with paper ballots. This is how stupid they are. They don't even understand, or they're either stupid or disingenuous. Because overwhelmingly, older voters vote, right? By definition, older voters vote, but older people vote. They have a higher propensity to vote. Now, why is that? Is because, one, polling places are where they live. A lot of times, like in Doylestown alone, 2 or 3 of the polling places, if I have to get them straight, but are in retirement communities. 3 of them are usually in there. 2 of them at minimum. 1 of them sometimes moves. So they can go and walk down the stairs, or they can have someone push them down the stairs. Not literally push them downstairs. Push them, down the stairs in their wheelchair, or go down the elevator. Not literally throw them down the stairs. Or what you see normally is that old voters use the mail-in ballot system. They use the system of absentees in different states. Now, I don't know about you, but if you really wanted to have a one-day vote, you wouldn't have people that work. They would have a harder time to vote. You would have people that can't drive have a problem. And you'd have old people having a problem. So all this is just to say, it's a stupid argument to say one-day elections with paper ballots. Here is the bottom one, is law enforcement supported and funded. Remember, there is little, I won't say no, but there is very little federal regulation and enforcement on law enforcement in this country. The overwhelming majority of law enforcement decisions are made by your local police department, somewhat regulated by your local government, and somewhat regulated by your state government. There is next to nothing in the federal government that supports or doesn't support or doesn't fund the police. So that is another BS argument. Jordan, you know what you should do? You should hop into the Discord. You should throw in the quote retweets and all that stuff, making something trend, which will lead to conversations. I think we should have this argument in the Discord server because I think it's worthwhile. And I think it's an interesting conversation. Again, I think these conversations of platforming people are on a per issue basis. You know, I think that there are some people that shouldn't be platformed, but I think public figures, specifically ones in government, and I'd rather them say it on Twitter so that everyone sees it than nobody sees it, and it just becomes the silo and the sycophants being, you know, locked into it, you know, on Truth Social or whatever, even Rumble. I mean, even like these platforms, you know, if we ever saw one really take off, we would really start to see the silos of this country become further radicalized. And I don't mean the silos as in the left. I just mean like the right would just keep getting more right and right. So that's just my opinion. I mean, I think there's some evidence to back that up. You can look at, you know, the QAnon documentary on HBO to see how 8chan, you know, led to some of that stuff. But yeah, that's, you know, that's neither here nor there. So here is one thing that I wanted to cover on Pennsylvania stuff. So over the last month, I'd say I think it was last week. My time is getting all mixed together, but the Pennsylvania State House Democrats won the majority again, as you will see by the chyron on the bottom as it scrolls by my head. The PA Dems win again. So what this means is that the Pennsylvania Democrats have control of the state assembly, which is important. It's important because of, well, it's not as important if we had lost to Doug Mastriano for governor, and we're going to talk about Josh Shapiro, not Ben Shapiro, here in a second. No relation. But if we had lost the governorship, we would be in trouble if we did not hold the state house. But we flipped the state house, and that means none of the constitutional amendments that are going to be, you know, passed by the two bodies can get on the ballot, and all this nonsense that, you know, the Republicans would try to pass, even if we had a Democratic governor, right? That is huge. And I think it's just going to continue to show that places like Pennsylvania, you know, obviously I'm biased. Most of the people watching this are biased. I think most of the people at this point in the audience are from Pennsylvania. But places like Wisconsin, Michigan, these are places that have been sliding blue, and not just like purple blue, like pretty consistently have been swinging blue, and that is a good sign. You know, we lost Florida. Florida is right now like that's a sunk cost, I think, and I think we can maybe make the case Ohio might be close to that, but Ohio is something that we should start to claw back. If we start to talk in the progressive lens of workers' rights, union rights, all that stuff, right? Because some of the more mainstream Democratic talking points that progressives hold, but like, I'm going to use liberals here loosely. Liberals use are not the talking points that are going to win over people in central Pennsylvania or in outside of Madison, Wisconsin. You know, like there are certain things that you can talk to, and knowing your audience and being like, look, you know, I'm as progressive as they come, but I'm going to talk to you about the issue that matters to you. So here is somebody that I think is actually effective at it. It is our governor, Josh Shapiro, who, humble brag, follows me on Twitter. But that's neither here nor there. He is talking about, I think he's actually in, as it says on top here, East Palestine. But Josh Shapiro, for those who don't know, was the Attorney General of Pennsylvania. And he is looking at holding Norfolk Southern, the train company that we talked about last week, accountable for the derailment, but more so like the disintegration of any sort of self-regulation, which again, self-regulation doesn't work. There's no reason for a company that would self-regulate, especially a company that doesn't interact publicly, like they don't engage with retail customers. So something like this is important, and I like seeing Democrats get on the offensive. And again, like that doesn't mean that like he's infallible, but Josh Shapiro has two different things in the last 2 weeks that in the last week, I should even say, that have just been like, dude, he's crushing it. I think he has his eyes maybe a little bit higher than governor. We'll see about that. It'd be interesting to see him in a presidential primary. It would be cool to have a presidential nominee or / potential president follow you on Twitter. I'd probably, Twitter would probably be dissolved by then, but you never know. You never know. So here's Josh Shapiro talking about the train situation.
Administration will remain vigilant for any threats to Pennsylvanians, and we will hold accountable Norfolk Southern, the company that made this vigilance necessary. The combination of Norfolk Southern's corporate greed, incompetence, and lack of care for our residents is absolutely unacceptable to me.
I'm just going to pause it here and just say this. We're starting to see a trend here, and you may have noticed it in my coverage of leading up to the election. We're seeing a trend here that, and this is not to say that Josh Shapiro is not, you know, a good Democrat, but Josh Shapiro is also not like, you know, he's not AOC, right? But the emphasis on highlighting corporate greed, he says it explicitly. The same thing that Raphael Warnock said in his campaigns and Tim Ryan said in his campaigns. These are the talking points, and they are talking points. It's a broader, you know, it's a broader critique if you want to dive into the details, but them highlighting this is corporate greed. You know why the trains are derailing? Because they're not investing in the repairs, the maintenance, the labor to keep up with what is necessary. It is greedy because they cut costs, they will privatize the revenues, and they will socialize the losses.
I've been outspoken about the serious concerns that I had with the company's failed management of this crisis. They chose not to participate in the unified command. They gave us inaccurate information and conflicting modeling data, and they refused to explore or articulate alternative courses of action when we were dealing with the derailment in the early days. In sum, Norfolk Southern injected unnecessary risk into this crisis, and they created confusion in this process. In the face of Norfolk Southern's arrogance and incompetence, I want you to know we are fighting back. We stand with the good people of Pennsylvania and Ohio, and we stand with them against this corporate greed and incompetence.
That's what we need to hear. Like this is like the changing of the guard in democratic leadership that we need. Again, I can't emphasize it enough. Like, you don't have to be the most ultra left progressive person to hit at these issues and be good even on some of these issues. Like, that is exactly what we need to hear. He's the governor of Pennsylvania, not necessarily the governor of California or New York. So again, this is where it's like, know your audience, know who you're talking to. He's in Ohio. You know, we're talking about the border here of Pennsylvania and Ohio. Like, this is the messaging. This is rhetoric that is going to work. This is the type of thing that we need to carry and say, you know who won in some of these red counties? Josh Shapiro and John Fetterman. So John Fetterman is more of that progressive lane. And both of them, because of the rhetoric of who they were talking to and how they were talking about it and what they were talking about and providing material benefits for the people of Pennsylvania, that is how you win elections. It is great to be good on all the stuff, all the other stuff, right? But bread and butter on the table, kitchen table issues. I mean, that's a cliche. It's not exactly how things work, but if you impact people's wallets, you impact their lives directly, that and do it in a positive manner, that is how you win on election night in Pennsylvania. And that's how you do it in these swing states. Bread and butter. That's how you do it. So I think I have, oh yeah, this is, so here's our, I guess you could call this the, as the Daily Show would have put it, the moment of Zen. This is just I'm just going to just talk about this for a couple minutes and then we're going to call it a night. This is George Anthony DeVolder Santos being interviewed by Piers Morgan. And we have one question and one answer that is about, you know, you're getting caught with all these lies. You're not actually Jewish. You lied about your marriage. There's some conflicting stuff about that being for immigration status. You lied about being dressing up in drag. You lied about going to college. You lied about where you worked. Why did you think you would get away with all of this?
Lies about even your academic record. I'm just struck, not necessarily that a politician would lie, but that you would think no one would find out.
Well, I'll humor you this. I ran in 2020 for the same exact seat for Congress.
Oh,
and
yeah?
I got away with it then. And I guess...
Right. Well, that's honest.
Stupid.
So you thought, actually, they're not going to find out?
No, I didn't think so.
Lies about
So,
even your...
there it is. George Anthony DeVolder Santos, he got away with it in 2020. Why not do it in 2022? He got all the way to Congress. You know, so if there's a lesson learned from that clip, maybe, you know, having complete belief in yourself beyond what is reasonable is one way to get somewhere in life. You know? That's probably not the real lesson to be learned from George Santos, but hey, if it helps you get to where you want to go, and you want to have the delusional thought of just being like, yeah, like, I'm just going to be a congressperson, I'm just going to lie about everything. You know? You don't get caught, I suppose. Like, good for you. But it's highly unlikely that you don't get caught, you know, telling all of these different lies. It's pretty easy to substantiate some of them. So, with all of that being said, thank you so much for hanging out with me on this Wednesday night. Back on the regular day this week. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Yes, we are finally over 100 subscribers. We are inching and inching and inching closer to 200 subscribers. We're not even close to it yet, but, you know, subscribers beget subscribers. So if you guys find this show interesting, engaging, you want to support progressive media, you want to improve the show, the more people we have engaging and watching, the better it's going to be, the better guests we can get. So hit the subscribe button. If you are able to, you can always share the clips. You can share links to the videos. That is going to help us grow the channel. And again, I can't emphasize it enough. Once we start getting, a bit larger and larger audience size, the guest draw becomes a little easier. I can say I can actually provide you, some audience. Not everyone's going to be as nice as like Malcolm Kenyatta and come on, one of my first episodes, right? So that is a growing process for the channel. So it helps the channel a lot to do that. Now, I'm also considering seeing if I can have, you can support the show on patreon.com/Greater Society Media. This is the best way to support the show if you can, because we can pay for graphics. Eventually we can do advertisements. I want to look eventually at getting some very low key, maybe limited edition run merch coming. That could be cool. But I'm looking at lowering the initial lowest level patron level, but right now it's $5 a month. If I can figure it out, I'm going to get it to be $2 a month. So see you on patreon.com/Greater Society Media as I do the Biden whisper. You can follow the show on Instagram, TikTok, as Jordan was making TikToks about the show earlier today. You can follow the show on Facebook as well. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Connor OHanlon. And you can listen to the program. Yes, you can. Just listen. I don't know why you wouldn't want to see all of the action that's going on the screen here. Seeing, my wonderful guitar and my support your local union poster. My new drinking horn that is just going to stay there. You can listen to it. You don't have to stare at me. Now, if you want to, I wouldn't blame you. But yeah. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you want to listen to podcasts, it's pretty much available. With all that being said, if you guys are able to join the Discord server, you can always drop suggestions for topics, clips. You can drop links. You can put memes. You can do all that stuff. You can put guest suggestions. You can do local organizing in there. That's what the goal of that Discord is, to gather people together and find a centralized spot. It might just happen to focus around, Greater Society podcasts, but it doesn't have to only be about that stuff. Broader politics discussions, broader philosophical and ideological discussions are always welcome. So hit that button in the link in the description below to join the Discord server and get it popping over there. But with all that being said, I will see you guys next week. I'm pretty much halfway done tax season, which is great. I might get my Saturdays back seemingly sooner rather than later, or it's technically the same amount of time, but it just feels like it's going faster. The days are extremely long, but the weeks are going fast, which helps, with the seasonal depression. So make sure to get outside, get your vitamin D, and until next week, everyone stay safe. Peace.